Book 2, Chapter 8 of Michael Strogoff, Courier of the Tsar. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Michael Strogoff by Jules Verne. Book 2, Chapter 8. A Hare Crosses the Road. Michael Strogoff might at last hope that the road to Irkutsk was clear. He had distanced the Tartars, now detained at Tomsk, and when the Emir's soldiers should arrive at Krasnoyarsk they would find only a deserted town. There being no communication between the two banks of the Yenisei, a delay of some days would be caused until a bridge of boats could be established, and to accomplish this would be a difficult undertaking. For the first time since the encounter with Ivan Ogareff at Omsk, the courier of the Czar felt less uneasy, and began to hope that no fresh obstacle would delay his progress. The road was good, for that part of it which extends between Krasnoyarsk and Irkutsk is considered the best in the whole journey. Fewer jolts for travelers, large trees to shade them from the heat of the sun, sometimes forests of pines or cedars covering an extent of 100 versts. It was no longer the wide steppe with limitless horizon, but the rich country was empty. Everywhere they came upon deserted villages. The Siberian peasantry had vanished. It was a desert, but a desert by order of the Czar. The weather was fine, but the air, which cooled during the night, took some time to get warm again. Indeed, it was now near September, and in this high region the days were sensibly shortening. Autumn here lasts but a very little while, although this part of Siberian territory is not situated above the 55th parallel, that of Edinburgh and Copenhagen. However, winter succeeds summer almost unexpectedly. These winters of Asiatic Russia may be said to be precocious, considering that during them the thermometer falls until the mercury is frozen nearly 42 degrees below zero, and that 20 degrees below zero is considered an unsupportable temperature. The weather favored our travelers. It was neither stormy nor rainy. The health of Nadia and Michael was good, and since leaving Tomsk they had gradually recovered from their past fatigues. As to Nicholas Pigassof, he had never been better in his life. To him this journey was a trip, an agreeable excursion in which he employed his enforced holiday. "Decidedly," said he, "this is pleasanter than sitting 12 hours a day perched on a stool working the manipulator." Michael had managed to get Nicholas to make his horse quicken his pace. To obtain this result, he had confided to Nicholas that Nadia and he were on their way to join their father, exiled at Irkutsk, and that they were very anxious to get there. Certainly it would not do to overwork the horse, for very probably they would not be able to exchange him for another, but by giving him frequent rests, every 10 miles for instance, 40 miles in 24 hours could easily be accomplished. Besides, the animal was strong and of a race calculated to endure great fatigue. He was in no want of rich pasturage along the road, the grass being thick and abundant. Therefore it was possible to demand an increase of work from him. Nicholas gave in to all these reasons. He was much moved at the situation of these two young people, going to share their father's exile. Nothing had ever appeared so touching to him. With what a smile he said to Nadia, "Divine goodness! What joy will Mr. Korpanoff feel when his eyes behold you, when his arms open to receive you! If I go to Irkutsk, and that appears very probable now, will you permit me to be present at that interview? You will you not?" Then striking his forehead, "But I forgot, what grief, too, when he sees that his poor son is blind! Ah, everything is mingled in this world!" However, the result of all this was the kibitka went faster, and according to Michael's calculations, now made almost 8 miles an hour. After crossing the little river Biriusa, the kibitka reached Biriusinsk on the morning of the 4th of September. There, very fortunately, for Nicholas saw that his provisions were becoming exhausted, he found in an oven a dozen pogatchas, a kind of cake prepared with sheep's fat, and a large supply of plain boiled rice. This increase was very opportune, for something would soon have been needed to replace the kumis with which the kibitka had been stored at Krasnoyarsk. After a halt, the journey was continued in the afternoon. The distance to Irkutsk was not now much over 300 miles. There was not a sign of the Tartar vanguard. Michael Strogoff had some grounds for hoping that his journey would not be again delayed, and that in 8 days, or at most 10, he would be in the presence of the Grand Duke. On leaving Biriussinsk, a hare ran across the road in front of the kibitka. "Ah!" exclaimed Nicholas. "What is the matter, friend?" asked Michael quickly, like a blind man whom the least sound arouses. "Did you not see?" said Nicholas, whose bright face had become suddenly clouded. Then he added, "Ah, no, you could not see, and it's lucky for you, little father." "But I saw nothing," said Nadia. "So much the better, so much the better, but I saw." "What was it then?" asked Michael. "A hare crossing our road," answered Nicholas. In Russia, when a hare crosses the path, the popular belief is that it is the sign of approaching evil. Nicholas, superstitious like the greater number of Russians, stopped the kibitka. Michael understood his companion's hesitation, without sharing his credulity, and endeavored to reassure him. "There is nothing to fear, friend," said he. "Nothing for you, nor for her, I know, little father," answered Nicholas, "but for me." "It is my fate," he continued, and he put his horse in motion again. However, in spite of these forebodings, the day passed without any accident. At 12 o'clock the next day, the 6th of September, the kibitka halted in the village of Alsalevok, which was as deserted as the surrounding country. There, on a doorstep, Nadia found 2 of those strong bladed knives used by Siberian hunters. She gave one to Michael, who concealed it among his clothes, and kept the other herself. Nicholas had not recovered his usual spirits. The ill omen had affected him more than could have been believed, and he who formerly was never half an hour without speaking, now fell into long reveries from which Nadia found it difficult to arouse him. The kibitka rolled swiftly along the road. Yes, swiftly. Nicholas no longer thought of being so careful of his horse, and was as anxious to arrive at his journey's end as Michael himself. Notwithstanding his fatalism, and though resigned, he would not believe himself in safety until within the walls of Irkutsk. Many Russians would have thought as he did, and more than one would have turned his horse and gone back again, after a hare had crossed his path. Some observations made by him, the justice of which was proved by Nadia transmitting them to Michael, made them fear that their trials were not yet over. Though the land from Krasnoiarsk had been respected in its natural productions, its forests now bore trace of fire and steel, and it was evident that some large body of men had passed that way. 20 miles before Nijni Udinsk, the indications of recent devastation could not be mistaken, and it was impossible to attribute them to others than the Tartars. It was not only that the fields were trampled by horses' feet, and that trees were cut down. The few houses scattered along the road were not only empty, some had been partly demolished, others half burnt down. The marks of bullets could be seen on their walls. Michael's anxiety may be imagined. He could no longer doubt that a party of Tartars had recently passed that way, and yet it was impossible that they could be the Emir's soldiers, for they could not have passed without being seen. But then, who were these new invaders, and by what out of the way path across the steppe had they been able to join the highroad to Irkutsk? With what new enemies was the Czar's courier now to meet? He did not communicate his apprehensions either to Nicholas or Nadia, not wishing to make them uneasy. Besides, he had resolved to continue his way, as long as no insurmountable obstacle stopped him. Later he would see what it was best to do. During the ensuing day, the recent passage of a large body of foot and horse became more and more apparent. Smoke was seen above the horizon. The kibitka advanced cautiously. Several houses in deserted villages still burned, and could not have been set on fire more than 24 hours before. At last, during the day, on the 8th of September, the kibitka stopped suddenly. The horse refused to advance. Serko barked furiously. "What is the matter?" asked Michael. "A corpse!" replied Nicholas, who had leapt out of the kibitka. The body was that of a mujik, horribly mutilated and already cold. Nicholas crossed himself. Then, aided by Michael, he carried the body to the side of the road. He would have liked to give it a decent burial, that the wild beasts of the steppe might not feast on the miserable remains, but Michael could not allow him the time. "Come, friend, come!" he exclaimed. "We must not delay even for an hour." and the kibitka was driven on. Besides, if Nicholas had wished to render the last duties to all the dead bodies they were now to meet with on the